Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm so glad that you could join me today. It's been a while since I have made a video, and I apologize for my absence. I've worked very hard on this presentation because I think it's something that a lot of people need to know. Today, we're going to take a break from what I've talked about previously with my choices on leaving Christianity and choosing to follow a new path for me. Today, we're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East and why you should care about it. There's a lot of information out there that people know parts of, and there's a lot of information that people say because they think it's true, but they don't really know. So instead of just assuming, we're going to take the time and we're going to find out together. So if you're ready, let's hit the intro and we'll begin. So today we're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East, why is it going on, and why you should care about it. I'm not sure where you live, but where I live in the United States of America, there are a lot of people who have a lot of opinions. But unfortunately, the people who have a lot of opinions and sometimes are the loudest voices in the room don't always have all the facts, and they certainly don't have accurate facts from time to time. So we're all about education. We want to learn and know more so that when we speak, when we use our voice, it's used appropriately. So when we're talking about what's going on in the Middle East, typically people are talking about Israel. They're talking about this place called Palestine. And sometimes they're even talking about places like Iraq and Iran and different countries such as those within the Middle East. There has been a lot of turmoil and a lot of tension as long as I've been alive. I can recall there being discussions that there was need for troop support in that area multiple times. Now, I can tell you that I'm not sure if it was because I was a child or because the people who told me just didn't know better. When I inquired as to why they keep fighting over there, what's going on, I was basically told that there are people who are angry and power hungry, and it's basically a fight over land because under the land is a lot of oil and they want that money, power for themselves. Now, the more that I've learned on this journey, the more that I've learned that there is no super easy explanation for what's going on. And the only way to really understand it is to go back to the very beginning and play connect the dots, essentially. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the beginning, find out what happened, and why we're seeing what we're seeing today. Then we're going to talk about, okay, so what we see today, why should we care? Okay, so that's our plan. That's our goal. Let's get back to history, okay? So we're going to back all the way up to 1300 BCE. So BCE, remember, stands for Before Common Era. Many people will use BC, standing for Before Christ, but BCE would be Before Common Era. The Jewish culture in particular uses BCE because they don't focus everything around Jesus. That's just the big change. So there's that. So around 1300 BCE, not exactly at 1300 BCE, but around there. There is a man named Moses, and he is leaving Egypt with the people, the Hebrew people, who would later become the Jewish people, with all their things, all their possessions going with them. They're fleeing Pharaoh. They're fleeing Egypt. So in Egypt, if you remember your history, there's that famous song of "Let My People Go." And that's basically talking about the struggles that the Hebrew people had in the 1300 BCE in Egypt. It was not an easy time. They were treated very poorly. They were whipped and beaten, and they were slaves to the Egyptian pharaohs. God came to Moses. Moses was told to tell Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Now he told him that he was just going to go out into the wilderness with the people to worship God for a couple of days, then they'd be back. We all know that didn't happen, but that was the premise. So 1300 BCE, Moses leaves Egypt. Now Moses is the leader for a long period of time, leads the Hebrew people throughout the desert. They were wandering for many years, and then they come to this Jordan River. They're going to cross this Jordan River, and when they cross the river, then they will enter this promised land known as Canaan, or some call it Canaan. Moses doesn't cross the river. Moses doesn't go into Canaan. He appoints Joshua to lead the Hebrew people into the promised land, the Holy Land, Israel, Canaan. Okay, multiple different names for it from the people. Okay, jump forward a couple of years. We're now in 957 BCE. And the first temple was built by King Solomon. Okay, now there was much excitement about the temple, and there was much frustration about the temple. Of course, whenever you're doing something, people are not going to agree. And there was certainly fighting amongst the Jewish people, the Hebrew people at that time, regarding the costs of the temple, the taxes, to the point of there was all this fighting. So basically, the 12 tribes that make up the Jewish people separated. There were 10 tribes that moved to the northern portion of the area, known as the Kingdom of Israel. And there were 2 tribes who stayed more towards the south, and they were known as the Kingdom of Judea. So you can see in this map how there's that separation. The 12 tribes basically said, "Fine, I'm not gonna argue with you anymore. We're gonna go up here. We're gonna do our own thing." That's how they decided it. Okay, moving forward a couple more years, we're at 722 BCE, and the Assyrian people have come into the area, and they have issued their first exile. First exile from the Assyrians. So the 10 tribes of the north, the Kingdom of Israel, essentially was lost or taken over by the Assyrians. Now, in war, in arguments, in a fight, if you win something, you claim that territory. Okay? So when that territory was claimed, the people in those 10 tribes of the north were either forced to assimilate with the Assyrian people, or they were killed. Nobody quite knows exactly what happened to those 12 tribes. but we do know that they are lost. So we anticipate that a majority of them, if not all of them, were put to death during this Assyrian time. Was it kind? No. Is it rather common, unfortunately? Yes. War and fights over territory, things, whatever, happen. And we never like for people to be hurt, but they happen. They're part of life. So we're not going to candy coat it. We're going to just talk about the facts. Now, so we have the 10 tribes of the north. They're taken over by the Assyrian government, or the Assyrian group, I should say. In 586 BCE, the Babylonians take control over the southern part of the country. Okay, southern part was the kingdom of, do you remember? Kingdom of Israel was in the top, and at the bottom was the kingdom of Judah. Well done. So at the bottom was the kingdom of Judah. The Babylonians take control, and because of who the Babylonians were, and they wanted to put the Jewish people in their place, essentially, they destroyed the first temple. The temple is a huge deal to the Jewish people. It is their place where they gathered, where they learned, where they had community, where they learned about God, where they read Torah. It was a huge deal, and it was destroyed. It was destroyed. When it was destroyed, the Babylonians were so fierce and so not savages, but they were so determined to make a point. They sent all the Jewish people that were there into exile. Now, can I tell you with 100% certainty that every single person left? No, I was not there. But that's what they sent, a majority of them into exile. Okay. Now, that was in 515 BCE, the Jewish people were allowed to return to the area from Babylon. So the Babylonians essentially changed their mind. They kicked them out. Nope, you can't be here. Get out of here. We're going to tear your temple down. And then when they changed their mind, okay, fine, you can come back. Okay. So they came back. They rebuilt their temple. They tried to rebuild homes. Like, okay, we're going to make our place again. And it was good for a little while. And then came 63 BCE, when the Romans came in. The Romans and the Roman Catholic Church were very big about taking over a lot of land, a lot of people, because the Roman government really wanted to push Christianity, and that spirit or dovetailed, I should say, with their policies. So of course, within an area where there's people who are Jewish or people who are Muslim, of course, they're not going to like that, and they're going to make a stance. So the Roman people come in and they take over Judea. Again, the top part, the 10 tribes on the top, were lost. It's just the bottom portion that we're looking at. And essentially that small portion turns into a vassal state for the Roman government, and it's under Roman control. Okay. Now, in 70 CE, we're into the Common Era now. 70 CE, the second temple is destroyed. Remember, they built the one temple, it was destroyed. They rebuilt a temple, second temple, it was destroyed. The temple is like the pinnacle portion, the home, the town square, if you will, for the Jewish community. So to have their temple destroyed a second time was huge. It was devastating. there's not much else I can say about that. It was huge and it was devastating. Okay, so this is the different movement of the Jewish people. Then we have between 130 and 136 CE, we have what's known as the Bar Kokhba revolt. And this was basically an action of assertion against the Roman people from the Jewish people. So the Jewish people were acting out against the Roman people because the Romans were restricting their ability to read from Torah, to practice their faith. The Romans were ticked. They were like, no, stop trying to push it. I'm not letting you read this. You can't do this. Knock it off. And so what did the Romans do? The Romans returned with a vengeance, and they annihilated anyone who was resisting. And they decided to rename that area. Remember, it was the Kingdom of Judah. They renamed it Palestine or Palestinia. Okay? They did this as an insult to the Jewish people. They did that as an insult to the Jewish people. It tore their connection from the land because they had been the Kingdom of Judah, the Jewish people. And the Romans said, nope, not anymore. Palestinia, which was a vassal state of the Roman government. Okay? Again, still not a state. They changed the name. It would be the equivalent of if the United States of America changed the name of Puerto Rico, or they changed the name of Arkansas. It's an area within that government that they're going to change the name of. Okay, now we move forward to 636 CE, and there's a new religion that starts to rise. This religion is called Islam. Okay, Islam has some of the teachings based off of the Torah. It takes some of the ideas. So some of like the kosher laws from the Jewish book of the Torah, they have their own laws, which are very similar in many regards, known as halal laws, if food is permissible or halal. And some of the rules are very similar. There are differences for certain, but there are also similarities. Okay? The other difference is that in Islam, they believe that Jesus existed. They believe that Jesus was a prophet. They just don't believe that Jesus was the last prophet. They don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. He was just one of many messengers, just like Muhammad was for Islam. Okay? It's important to know that 1636 is when Islam started to rise. Almost immediately, within this new movement, there tends to be two different groups. There's the Shia and the Sunni, okay? And these sections really are separated based on their beliefs. The beliefs of who should be chosen as council or political power. So there's two different groups saying, well, I think this person should be in charge. No, I think this person should be in charge. Should it be an election to see who the leader is? Should that person be nominated or named before the person previous leaves or retires or expires? Thoughts like that. So the Sunni and the Shia. Now, in the United States of America, we have two main political parties. We have the Democrats and the Republicans. They're frequently at odds regarding different thoughts of what should happen or how things should happen. So picture that rub multiplied by, let's say 100. Because everything they do is built around their interpretation, their beliefs. So it's a rub. And they're in very close territories. They are very near each other. In the United States of America, you may or may not know if your neighbor has the same political views as you. In the Muslim culture, your whole daily life changes if you are part of the Sunni or the Shia. There's that constant rub. It's not just a slight thing, it's more consistent. Okay, so this, when it starts to grow in 636, there's this immediate rub. And this rub, this friction, this tension only grows stronger with time. Okay? Then fast forward a bunch of years, we are now in 1099 through 1291. And there is this phenomenon called the Crusades. Now, I don't know if it's just me and my limited understanding, but when I was in school, I thought the Crusades were a good thing. I was taught that the Crusades were the Roman government and they were trying to fight people who were trying to take over too much territory. In my head, in my Christian schooling, I was taught the Crusades were a good thing because they were knocking back the territory that the Islamic culture was taking over. The Islamic culture, the Muslim people were growing too fast and they didn't like it, so they had to be put down. They had to be put a stop to. So there was the Crusades. And again, we were taught that there was a good thing. So then in 1291, the group of Crusaders defeated the Islamic group. Okay, Islamic group was gone. Now what happened? Now there was a man that took over by the name of Memluk. Okay, and he started his rule and that took over the area. In 1517, again, another movement of people here, we have the Ottoman Empire taking over that area. The Ottoman Empire is very Muslim or Islamic focused. They have Muslim principles that are embedded into them. That's just who they are, okay? In their rule, they banned Jewish land purchases until the end of World War I. Again, when you take over an area, you get to make the rules. And at that time, when the Ottoman Empire came in, they said, nope, we don't want any Jewish people here. They can't own any land. Now, did Jewish people own land? Absolutely. There was always Jewish people in the Holy Land, in the present-day Israel, at one point, Kingdom of Judah. There has always been Jewish people in that area. There may not have been a ton. There may not always be a temple, but there has always been a Jewish presence in that area. Now, there is sometimes this wavering idea of, okay, but this is just a territory. Yeah, it is. It's never been its own country. It's typically always land that's grabbed up by another group. Okay? So that's where they are. Now jump forward to 1882 and the first Aliyah, or the return of the Jewish people to their homeland, because that's what they know as the Kingdom of Judah. The Jewish people have always felt a connection to this area. That's where Moses led the people. So that's what they viewed as their homeland. The first Aliyah, return of Jewish people to this homeland, occurred. Now, there are still people who make aliyahs and make that transition or that trip daily, yearly. Every person tries to go at least once in their lifetime. There are Christians who go to the land of Israel. There are Muslims who go to the land of Israel. It's an important place. But in 1882, that was the first group of Jewish people who had been kicked out or left at some point chose to return to the Holy Land. Okay. Moving forward, we're at 1897, and there's a Zionist movement that starts to grow. Now, Zionists basically are people who support the idea of having an independent Jewish state. That's it. The Jewish people have a right to a place. Well, that got a little bit longer than I anticipated. So we're going to take a break, and I will see you next time for part 2. Until then, remember, the more you know, the more you grow. Take care.